All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll call this work session to order. Purpose of this work session is to hold a general discussion on the agenda item listed below. Members of the public are welcome to attend either in person or remotely. However, no public comment will be accepted and no official action will be taken during this section. Roll call.
Councilor Arditi.
Here.
Councilor Tyso.
Here.
Councilor Hartman.
Here.
Councilor Braverman.
Here.
Councilor Gelfen. Councilor Kazmierski.
Here.
Mayor Manel.
Here. All right, thank you. So we will discuss Resolution R2025-02, a resolution regarding eminent domain. Sure, Weston.
So it seemed like at our meeting when we were discussing, there was two issues. One was the scope of the area that this resolution pertained to, and the other was the timing. So a periodic review in the state of Oregon typically comes anywhere about every 7 years is periodic review. That's why it was identified as 2030. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can't try to apply for grants before that, if that's what the council wants to do. So you'll see that on the second page of the resolution, number 4.
Can I just add, you said there were only 2 issues at the last meeting. That's not exactly true. The third issue that you didn't mention is the fact that it was brought up by me that eminent domain should be either applied to all or not to all. That's the issue.
The scope of the eminent domain.
That's one of the issues.
Yeah, that's what I said, the scope of the eminent domain.
Well, who it applies to, I don't know if you want to call that scope. To me, scope is more about what's written here. To me, who it applies to is beyond.
So this is, what's contemplated in this resolution is what's called extraterritorial eminent domain, which is areas outside of the city. So the properties in question that this applies to are properties that are not in King City. They're in our urban growth boundary, and they're normally properties only come into the city upon annexation. So the way, how we can use eminent domain within the city versus how we can use eminent domain outside of the city is different. Our ability to use eminent domain outside of the city is far more limited, and there has to be a strong nexus between public safety and the eminent domain. So where you would see it most commonly would be like if a city is locating a high elevation reservoir, because they want the water pressure to gravity flow. So in that instance, they might purchase property that's outside of the city's boundaries, and then we'll try to acquire right away for the pipes, but might need to use eminent domain. So in that instance, the sort of public safety purpose would allow you to use eminent domain for the water, but for within the city, our ability to use it is just far more broad.
My resource of eminent domain in Oregon is very limited anyway, and it has to be applied equally or it's eminent domain abuse. And I don't think it matters if it's within.
For future, is that, am I reading that wrong?
Well, so if we could say that, the council could say that we're not going to use, or, we're not going to use eminent domain extraterritorially, so that we were not going to use eminent domain outside of the city. With this, there's specific properties, one of which has a conservation easement on it, that people have raised as concerns about those properties. And I think my understanding is that this was drafted to address those concerns.
So the intention of this resolution was to address the concerns that were raised, which was that the city was going to go out and use eminent domain, which we've said from the very beginning we have no intention of doing, we have no desire of doing. So this is to address those false narratives and say that we are not going to use eminent domain along the southwest corridor or this southern corridor. And so that was the intention of this. And then to also say that as funding becomes available, we can take another stab or take another look. But right now we don't have the bandwidth nor the resources to dive back into a large scale planning project again. So we would need to go through and try to get some more grant funds and things in order to try to.
So as part of the purpose is to address the concern basically of events and conservation easement. So is that covered in this, or?
It's implied.
Or it's only implied?
It's implied.
So-
It is covered. It's the area between 137th and 150th.
During our conversations with the Columbia Land Trust, as part of this, the Columbia Land Trust told us that they would, if something were to happen because of the conservation easement, we would have to threaten the use of eminent domain so that they could negotiate with us, because the whole purpose of their organization, which I believe is a 501c3, is to protect land. So that's something that we were told, is that, well, you would have to, at the very least, write a letter threatening to use eminent domain before they could come to the table to negotiate. Now, Carla Bankston had no interest in negotiating, you know, I mean, it's not, this was just a predicate step because of their 501(c)(3) status that would be necessary. Now, whether we could threaten an eminent domain if we didn't actually have the ability to use eminent domain, I mean, that's kind of a unique legal question, but, yeah.
Well, I think, to support what Dan was just saying, if we're gonna do this, I think we should do it right. I don't like when things are implied. As a lawyer, and I'm sure you agree, counsel, it'd be nice to have it expressed, because implied leaves a lot of gray area. My concerns are this: I thought, Mike, you came up with this idea, this resolution. You mentioned it at the meeting, because you had a meeting with Randy Colson, former council member. And somehow in that meeting, to be conducive to your conversation with him, you thought it would be a good idea to put this resolution together, and I laud you for that. I was thinking, if to support what the conversation was with former Councilor Olson, I would think that right now, to restore trust in the community and to calm people down and to restore that faith and trust and veracity and accountability, I think it would be better that we would say we're not going to be using eminent domain so people can calm down, and that the words that you spoke, that Randy Cindy echoed several times to all of us was that you had promised the community that we would only deal with willing buyers. And I think that having all of this in the way that it's drafted, it does not accomplish the goal that I heard you and I heard this council say we were trying to further. So I'm just trying to get us to the goal that you spoke to try to support you and Mr. Olson in what you're trying to accomplish. Does that make sense?
I appreciate that, Counselor, and I just want to make a point of clarity because I think there's a fine line that we have walked for a very long time. We've always said that eminent domain is always the last resort. It's always our preference to work in tandem or cooperatively with property owners. And to that end, that's what we do. And, you know, what we've always said is that eminent domain is like a last resort. It's a tool in the toolbox that we don't want to use. It's a very onerous process. It's difficult to navigate. It's not a preferred mechanism, and we don't want to use it. We prefer to work in cooperation through bidding process.
So why don't we have a resolution basically says that? As that right now, we have no intention to use eminent domain on these properties, including the Bankston, Preserve. And we all know, as Councilor Hartman just astutely pointed out, it's not binding on future council. So I think that our collective goal is to restore that peace and trust in the community. And that's all I'm trying to help us do.
So maybe,
So that's in here already, it's already,
I read it, I didn't see it exactly spelled out.
so
maybe
it's like
we put
the city will strive for voluntary land acquisition agreements if necessitated. The city will engage in good faith negotiations with property owners along any proposed route to secure necessary land acquisitions through voluntary agreements. That's number 2 on there. So it's already in there, exactly what I just said. It's on
second
the
page, number 2.
resolve and follows.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been looking, but I'm just looking at the whereas and the,
So should we move that to a whereas, do you think?
I think it would be better said a resolution of the King City Council declaring that eminent domain will always be a last resort and that the city endeavors to, it's what you have in page 1 and 2. I think that would go a long way. The way it's written, I just think it sounds very threatening and unequal, and that's what is not the goal of what I heard, Mr. Weston tell us was the goal of this.
Yeah. So-
I ask, because I don't read it that way.
Yeah,
Jessica, I'm just curious, for my learning, what in here is, I'll use I don't know if it's the right word, but biased? Because I read it pretty straight down the line,
I
but
don't think it's biased. I just think that declaring that eminent domain shall not be used for property along the southern, eastern, and west corridor, that's not really what we're saying.
just more blatantly.
What we're saying is, we want to use eminent domain as a last resort, if at all, and we would like to work with willing buyers, and currently, we'd like to work with willing buyers along this corridor, including, and I think the title should include the Bankston.
I don't,
To make sure that, or just make sure that the title of this and all of this connects the dots to what you're saying, because to the point, going to the last page, a lot of people are never gonna.
I'm wondering too, though.
so the last, so can I just?
You're right.
So let me, so if I may, the last page is the actual meat and potatoes of the resolution. That's
Yeah.
what the council is agreeing to.
You know, people go on headlines.
Yeah, and also, or,
Or headlines, right.
The whereas clauses have no legal effect. They're not anything. They're just,
I know that.
they're just kind of recitals.
The public, this is for the
All
public.
right.
Okay, I know.
So-
I wonder if Vince has something to say.
well, Councilor Braverman, super quick, though. Councilor Braverman, I think we also should put in there, instead of just if it's a buyer, if it's a current owner that wants to keep their property and develop it, you know, then we can,
Yeah.
okay.
I think our goal is to
Yeah.
restore trust to the public. I'm just trying to figure out a way to effectuate the goal that you set forth at the council meeting. I did not think at the council meeting, that's why I said, let's have a workshop. And I don't know if going forward, we could schedule it a little bit later, because right now I'm in trouble with San Mateo Court, and I can give you the designated and see where Scott's going. He's not happy right now that I left. Was there by Zoom, by the way. I didn't fly in. I think that we should, the headline speak everything to people, okay? How you wanna word it, I'm open to your suggestions, but again, I'm trying to get us to the goal.
And I like your suggestion about saying it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
a buyer,
yeah.
but it's just probably just the landholder instead of saying buyer,
Yeah,
because
Yep.
a buyer is going to be the landholder, right?
Okay, under which one is that?
well, that would, I think, be more of the title, right?
Yeah.
Are we, what we're talking about?
I think the title,
We don't wanna make it a huge paragraph, but.
right, but the way it's written now does still seem very preferential because there's still a large portion of our community that's afraid of eminent domain in Edgewater, right? So it still is, I would say, divisive because it's just promising it for one group and not another. So I think making it more broad, if that is the goal to, like, you know, then that's what it should say.
Be careful on inside King City versus outside, because some of us are gonna have conflict.
Not taking C, because if someone doesn't want to develop or be part of the city, they're not gonna annex into the city.
Right.
And what we're saying is if they don't wanna annex into the city and they don't wanna be part of the city, we don't wanna use, eminent domain.
Okay, so that would be more clear.
Yeah.
I don't see the harm though in adding the city as well as the outside of the city, because, hold on, just hear me out, because number one, not promising that you're never gonna use eminent domain. It's not promising anything, it's just saying we endeavor to work with, willing buyers, and that's our goal. It doesn't say you're never gonna use eminent domain.
Okay, so you wanna modify that, because right now it says this council shall not use eminent domain on this.
Well, that's why I'm saying,
Well, we could
I think we need to word it.
reword it to where we're want to negotiate with willing and able sellers or
I think
something.
that would go a
Yeah.
long
So we-
way to your goal with Mr. Olson of trying to restore, because I read on a website, and of course, you can make fun of me, I know websites on Google are not, always accurate, but I read somewhere that in Oregon, it's actually considered abuse to even tell somebody that you might use eminent domain as a way of negotiating. An injured party could claim that the city council was, by suggesting eminent domain, was causing abuse and domination to make a person feel that they had no choice. I don't want to see us go there. Again, I don't know if that's true. You might know better than I, but I read that today. So while I was waiting for the judge to talk to the other side, I was Googling, okay, probably gonna get in trouble. So it concerns me. It concerns me. I want us to look like we are doing right by the community and being transparent and not coming across. And I think the word eminent domain in and of itself sounds very ominous
Yeah.
and threatening. It does.
I agree.
So normally it's the property owner wants you to threaten eminent domain because then they don't realize, to the extent that they're selling their property for a gain, if their property is purchased using eminent domain, then they don't have to realize their gain. They just roll their basis into their next property. So the, former Tigard Mayor Cook was here last meeting. I used to staff Tigard before they got an in-house attorney. And we actually used eminent domain in Tigard once. It's the only time I've ever had to use it. And it's because the property owner wanted to sell the property to the city, but the lender wouldn't sign off on it. So the reason we used eminent domain was to force the lender to release the property. I've never heard of eminent domain, abuse before, but, and it's a rarely used tool, though the Sherwood School District used it, a few, 8 years ago? Yeah,
I think Westland School District, was it Westland School District or Sherwood School District?
Sherwood.
Sherwood used it for their high school
Yeah.
and middle school. That's coming.
I understand though that if someone were to get a letter out of the blue threatening eminent domain, that it would be very concerning. But I think that we would always approach them first. They wouldn't get a letter.
I wanted, can you hear what Dan's saying? I'm sorry, she's making a good point here.
Oh, I just said, it's interesting what you brought up about the rollover tax basis and the threat of eminent domain. Yeah.
Yeah, because people shouldn't have to realize a gain if they don't have to So if you write the letter threatening to use eminent domain, then they're able to take that to their CPA. And so it's, most of the time it's done. Well, and there are other reasons, like, for instance, if you have like the Conservation Trust, you know, they have to demonstrate to the IRS that they're meeting their core obligations as a conservation organization, so.
That's when we would use you as our land use attorney to engage with the people and see how they want to do it to avoid their tax basis. That doesn't mean we have to put it in this resolution.
Well, I wasn't suggesting where, I was just trying to explain to you why we would do this.
Okay.
I think it was more of a
I
history.
would say for clarification, as long as whatever we're putting in doesn't stop us from using it as a tool for future negotiations, then I'm in agreement with what we're saying. But I agree, when there's a especially a 503C, my experience with land use is they need to have eminent domain pressed upon them, so they actually have a legal way to react, or they're defending nothing. They have to have that as it's just a tool.
Yeah.
Again, I've never seen it used, but I've seen it used as a way to start.
Yeah, and that's what the lawyers for the Columbia Land Trust told us. They said that before they could have any negotiations, we would need to threaten, and we're not going to be there, right? Because,
Let's first see if we, look,
yeah,
I like to I'm a negotiator. I like to negotiate. If we can negotiate, that would be best. I don't like to threaten people. I don't like to threaten them and make them feel scared and make them feel powerless in order to get my point across. I don't think that's a good way to foster goodwill in a small community. I think that we're all in agreement that we just need to soft pedal how we write this, but I think we're all in agreement with what needs to be done, so let's just do it.
So if I may, I want to give a little bit more, perspective from my conversations with, Mr. Olson, and also with, the folks from, New Home Company and MLG who are holding, some of these group meetings. When I spoke with them, they felt that this corridor that's identified in here was the biggest concern. And so what they were telling me is if we could essentially satisfy that by saying that we're not gonna use eminent domain in this corridor, and that we would attempt to get grant money and try to take a look at this again in the future when we can, because there's a whole slew of new regulations through the CFEC stuff and all these other issues. So we're basically gonna have to start from scratch and work our way through it. But if we could make those two, that seemed to satisfy the majority of that group, that community group where they had those meetings. That was my understanding talking to them. So after my conversation with Randy, I had that conversation with them. We tried to put it into writing. I talked to Mayor. Mayor was like, yeah, we need to put this together. So that's what this was intended to do, is kind of satisfy those community meetings with those guys, my conversation with Mr. Olson, and kind of let people know that this is not our intention. We do not intend to go plow a road through everyone's property. We don't intend to use eminent domain on your property. We don't plan to do that.
Let's just say the city council is.
Is there, I have a question, the part that says, the thing about the 200 feet moving an intersection or a corridor, is, like, can we see on the map that moving a corridor 200 feet would actually avoid the Bankston conservation, like?
There's mechanisms and means.
It wouldn't make like the map shows more of a straight road. It would kind of zig, but you could do it.
But it's possible, and how it's written to avoid.
Yeah. You would take, the problem is that you would have impacts to other people's properties.
It would
So
two properties.
it would go through, is it Mario's property? You would have to go through Mario's property at that intersection, or raise the intersection north at that point in order to loop over the Bankston one and get to the next intersection. You're basically switching the burden to somebody else. But like I've always said, as a creative contractor could get pretty creative and totally avoid the Bankston easement if they so desire.
It'd be nice if we could just agree to avoid that. That would take a lot of stress, a lot of people.
But it's interesting that you have to have eminent domain in your back pocket so that a 503C organization can justify its fee when they have become the steward of a piece of property. You know, it's not that they won't negotiate and say, let's move it 100 yards here or 50 yards there and have the least amount of impact, but they're not allowed to do that because of the IRS unless. They can do it, but they just have to pay more
Right.
stuff.
Yeah, they would pay their taxes on it. Yeah, they can still do it.
So in your question, Counselor Kazmierski, the TSP talks about the intersections themselves, so the intersections can adjust. It doesn't necessarily talk about the road alignments, but the road alignments still have to meet, codes, engineering specs and everything else for the design speed. How that looks or how that, plan if a developer's creative enough with it.
One thing I'll tell you in construction is just because it's on a drawing does not mean it's how it will be built.
So would these roads not exist unless either Bankston or those two other properties decide that it's fine for them to go through?
Yeah, that's basically it.
But the road would probably only be built if those properties developed, because normally roads get built as part of the property development itself, and then they stub out to the next property. And then if the next property owner doesn't sell or develop, then it's just stubbed out.
So we have so many dead ends.
There's lots of examples,
Yeah.
all around there's examples of how that works.
That just needs to be more clear.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, or there's the one house that has a big lot in the middle of an urban dense area, because they're not selling, so build around them.
The other question I had is at the very last whereas says that, will likely not qualify for additional periodic review, so are we still gonna try?
Yes.
And,
I think we
So that's what I was proposing to adjust.
take the word.
On that last whereas and then number 4 as well, is we can just take out that date and, you know, as these opportunities pop up, we can try to apply again. We're just trying to be real and say, it's probably gonna take us some time because we just got our grant, so, like, you figure there's umpteen hundred cities throughout the state, and you get your grant, and then you go to the bottom. And then you have to work your way back up in order to get into their queue again.
I definitely think removing the date, trying like as much as we can.
Yeah.
I like the idea of taking out the date, because then people just keep coming back saying, well, you said this, Mike, and you said that, and I don't think it helps us to restore that credibility. And I think if we can just tighten this up, and I can make some suggestions whenever you're ready, and we can just get this done, and I think
Do you have the name, like, who's on the council right now?
I don't know how this works when it says, it doesn't bind future council. How other people, some of us will retain and other people won't. So I don't know, how does that work? I don't know which council.
Yeah, the council would need to, if it was a concern, the council would need to take back up the issue, I would imagine. Like, after following, like, an elective process. Yeah, if it's basically what we're committing right now is this council only has control over what they render. And we're saying this council's not gonna go use property or use eminent domain out here. So our whole intent here is to put those fears to rest and make a solid commitment to people that we're not gonna do this.
So that, yeah, like if we put the next electoral process, that,
I think
Like,
something.
stays in effect until it's, I don't know, right? Because I don't think that in 2020, whenever the next term ends, we would have to, like, redo the resolution, right? Because it just stays in effect.
It'll be 2026.
That's just it, so,
Yeah.
That's what I said, so does it just stay in effect until a new council decides they want to change it?
I like the
Is
word.
that how it works, or does it?
After an elected process.
Yeah, after an elected process.
Yeah, I think
It's pretty clear, right? There was an election that happened.
Does that mean that we have to relook at it
No,
at that point, or it just stays in effect until we want to relook at it?
right, the future city council could repeal it, so you couldn't permanently,
Right.
yeah.
I'm saying, like, we don't, when there's movement on the council, we don't have to come back and, like, re-vote on it.
No.
That's what I'm saying, okay.
Yeah, it stands unless somebody says, let's revisit.
and we did put in here stands as guidance for future councils as well,
Yeah.
so.
So that kind of helps with that.
I was gonna say, like, we also, if you want, we could have another resolution just for that interested party we said about the new home. If they need a letter, that's basically, we could vote on it. We could take care of them, and then we could take care of this. We don't have to put them jointly if we think that's gonna be a problem. We can jointly do this for both, but we could do separate too.
You mean not coding interest?
Yeah, he said that the developer wanted to say we needed something that said blah, 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 blah.
No, they had, open forum meetings, my understanding, is small group meetings with, members of the public. So, in those meetings and through that group, they came to conclusions similar to what we're asking to set aside here, so that we're not gonna use eminent domain and that we'll take a future look at the TSP if the grant funds become available. I mean, that's what we're trying to.
So if we say that the city council is going to try to work with willing buyers and try to negotiate,
Yeah.
and we don't bring up the word eminent domain on the last page too much, or nobody reads. So however you wanna do it, but I think we just need to reword it.
So you wanna reword it that, the city,
Why don't we change the title to a resolution of the King City Council relating to property acquisition? So we're not even talking about eminent domain, we're talking about property acquisition. And we could, simplify the whereas clauses significantly. We could say the King City Council recognizes the importance of property rights, is committed to ensuring fair and transparent governance and land use decisions. The council acknowledges community concerns related to the potential use of eminent domain for this project.
I would move that one, just having that second.
That second one.
Okay.
It sounds threatening.
Frankly, we could get rid of every whereas clause except the first one, and then say now therefore, and the commitment to the Bankston property one, and then the voluntary transaction throughout the rest, and call it good.
And just add after an elected process. Number
Yeah,
five.
for the future, right,
I think,
an elective process.
that, I would, I don't know if that satisfies everyone. Randy and,
we still need something in addition to. Someone else, we could write a different letter.
Concern, Mike.
my concern is that they're really concerned about this corridor, 137 to 150. And if we don't call that out and we don't say what our intentions are here, like, what's called out here talks about, talks about our plan moving forward as well. And so it's a commitment that says that we're not gonna go do this. And so we remove everything kind of take,
That's the first,
Our commitment is right here.
yeah, the commitment's still here.
We're actually making our statement more broad
yeah.
to answer this.
Right.
I think, Mr. Watts has it.
Yeah.
I think it'll satisfy, but like I said, if the developers come back, he might just say they need something else. Can't we?
And that's, yeah, that's something we put on an agenda and we
Can't
just,
we
yeah,
on the agenda and
tackle it,
them?
yeah.
In the Councilor Braverman's point, having just one whereas clause, and then these 5 points makes it more likely that people are gonna read those 5 points, because it's all on one page, and it's going to be a lot more accessible.
I mean, I just came out of court, I mean, this is just so legalese, I'm just, my eyes are glazed over.
Mike, we're actually giving you what you want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's just like.
I'm just wondering what we're missing, but,
we're not missing anything, because this is
I think you've
broader.
actually made it broader that
Yeah.
we could use it.
Yeah.
To argue that. I mean,
Does Counselor Arditi have any input? Or are you just enjoying the show?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
yeah.
I can't hear you half the time, so I've had to put you on closed caption. So
Oh,
I don't know half who's speaking because all I'm seeing is words. But for some reason, audio is not coming in clearly, consistently. So I'm reading it all, but I'm not really knowing who's saying what.
I didn't know that was a microphone. Have you been able to hear me? I didn't even know my microphone was here.
I can't hear anybody. I can only read. I put it on closed caption so I can read what is being said, but it doesn't preference the name of the person saying it. So you're all just a nice essay to me.
a nice long words.
A lot of words, a lot of sentences.
Okay.
For everyone else, they aren't.
We need to look at these remote mics.
And you haven't said anything. What would you like to add? Anything?
I really like what you're saying.
Thank
And-
you.
And it sounds like we're working together.
It's possible.
It is possible for us to do that.
Like I said, I would only ask you guys to move the date, the time that we, a bit later so I don't get fired, because I'm gonna be very unhappy if I lose my job. I'll be on the street corner with my little cup.
It's not picking up.
Because it's already stated on here.
So I think it's having the first whereas clause and then moving right into now therefore. The item number 1 addresses the Bankston, property in that corridor that is
Right.
of specific community concern. Item number 2 is saying that our, just reflects what we try and do is work in good faith in order to come to, an agreement, commitment to transparency, the future periodic review. And we might want to get rid of that date.
Get rid of the date and take out any message of eminent domain, just say we endeavor, I mean, you have to strive, that's fine, but I think the city will endeavor to work with to
I would like
voluntarily.
it, I would almost like it to say like, we'll apply for future grants as they become available, like,
Yeah.
each one as we can.
Yeah.
As available.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's do that, as
Yeah,
available.
I like
instead of, the date.
yeah.
Because you never know when Metro's going to have more money.
Yeah,
I mean, in all seriousness.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes they don't have, sometimes people don't want to do the work.
Yeah, they'll pass by it, yeah.
And so if money could be available or everyone could.
Someone applies and gets it and decides not to do whatever project, but it'll get passed on.
I would switch 1 and 2, because I don't like 1 talking about eminent domain. I think 1 should be, we endeavor to do voluntary. Second, we're obviously with property rights, and that we want to work with willing sellers.
We can do 1 to 3 so that we have voluntary and then we have transparency and then we have the commitment to the specific property.
Yeah, that could be great. I think that would be better
So
to
one
see.
would drop down to 3 and
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 would be 2.
And then you're gonna add to 5 that, the current city council, or, after an elected process, or however you wanna word that. But I like that better, but the heading needs to be different than a resolution of King City declaring eminent domain shall not be used.
You think the one,
Right, I think if we just say a resolution of the King City Council relating to property acquisition.
Yeah,
Because this is a lot more than eminent domain. This is about
okay, property acquisition.
Yeah.
I just want to see, I mean, I know we're not supposed to take comment from the audience, but would it be okay if I ask them if they have any suggestions? Because sometimes it'd be nice to hear that before we have our city council meeting. Are you guys good with that, or if not, I won't ask?
Forum issue,
I don't want to break any rules.
a work session is
Okay, we
basically
could
a
stop,
council work
if we
session.
did it, we could stop.
We have to stop the work session and then have
Can we
discussion
take a
after.
quick break and just have a little powwow?
If you wanna have a powwow
That
with
would be
somebody,
cool.
during our 5-minute recess.
Yeah, we could take a 5 minute.
Yeah, I don't have anybody specifically, I just wanted, I didn't even, I didn't think I was gonna be here.
Yeah.
Okay, we will, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.
Do we have anything to drink, by the way?
There's,
Water.
diet.
I think if there are any suggestions, it'd be nice to hear them before we draft another version to vote on.
Do you have any suggestions?
has a park labeled for that area. So it would be, portion of that would be designated to parks and recreation open space, the majority of it, the Bankton easement predominantly. But if they were to develop that property, and I don't know her exact acreage, but I think it's about 30 to 40 acres of upland. Right. So you're looking at almost, if you're looking at a density of 15 to 20 units per acre, a lot of units. And that, it's gonna have traffic demand.
Right,
Could we,
that's, I think that's part of the reason is, I think there could be, I think there could be.
It connects to 130, right?
The road, all in here, without,
Well, that's the other resolution that we talked about, is having a relook at this whole thing.
Right,
To see if we can have a relook without it costing us a fortune, to see if we can avoid this, because again, that seems to be a lot of the community concern, is this, preserve, I don't know that there's any perfect way to write this, I think we're pretty smart, but I do appreciate, Janet's concerns, I think they're legitimate.
Yeah, I think our whole hope here is just to let the owners know that we're not gonna kick them out of their house and plow a road through the property.
Yeah, no, I don't think
I-
anybody thinks that.
I don't think anyone thinks
Yeah,
that.
nobody
I
thinks
think the concern is the road on this map. Eventually it will go. I don't care personally if I'm gone or not. I mean, really, I'm concerned about, the river. If it happens 30 years from now, that's still bad. I guess, so it, as the community state, I won't say that. I think it's on the map, it's gonna be built. That's a concern. I'm not thinking King City's gonna come in tomorrow and take land and build it. Of course not. I don't think they're gonna build it. Of course not. My concern is, if it's on the map, it will be built.
And this is not gonna be binding on future, once there's an
I
elected
don't care if it
process.
happens 20 years from now,
And just for the public listening online, that is a member of the public.
well, we're at a recess still.
Right, so-
To be transparent, should we allow Ms. Mobley since her hand is up?
Well, I mean,
Well,
we've already crossed the line, so I think, I don't know, legal counsel or off.
I think we've gotten this resolution to something that people can understand, that speaks to community concerns. I think we've softened the language by removing a bunch on the first page and by removing item 1 to item 3. I haven't looked at the Bankton easement in several years, because the discussions we had were back in 2018. Yeah. I mean, it was really early. And so I vaguely remember how it works, but can't speak to any of what was spoken to. I think that so let's just, maybe it would help to go through. So we've
So we're sorry, we're still at break.
just to visit and say hi to everyone, is that okay?
Should we, since we, like I said earlier, since we allowed audience here, we have one audience member raising their hand. Should we allow them to speak?
Yeah,
I would love to.
Right, since
I'm okay.
we allowed them to speak, let's give.
all right, one time.
Okay.
Recess, right?
We're in recess, I'm trying to eat, trying to be polite. Yeah, it's nice for to have like a circle,
sharing of.
because normally I can't see
I
it,
know,
I can't hear everyone.
we should be curved.
Yeah, I mean, I can barely hear you
You're
speaking.
gonna get a lot more out of a meeting if somehow you can incorporate comments from the people that live in the area.
I think you can ask John to chime in now, sorry.
Ms. Mobley, are you able to hear us?
Yes, it's not been easy to hear you guys. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say thank you, Mark, for recognizing I was here with my hand up. I do really appreciate that. I will make my statement quick. Again, I didn't hear everything that was said, but I did catch, I think, enough that I heard you guys say that you were still very focused on grant money in order to pay for this relook. I know a lot of times grants are also matched with city money. I would like to suggest, or at least put it out there, that I do believe, especially with all the development coming in and the funds that are coming in, the city could also make a commitment to put money, of the city money towards a relook, especially since the budget is going to be done in July. So I would like to see that maybe in July's budget, that there maybe should be, starting to save or put some money aside for the relook that might be needed to match a grant down the road, or even just pay for what we need to pay for out of our own pocket. So thank you. That was my thought.
Our Metro grants actually have been 100% funded by Metro, so we haven't had to provide any.
Not all of them, but.
I reached out to Metro staff, their land use attorney, and the planner that's been assigned to this after our last meeting, and just asked whether they would have availability to come to a meeting and to, discuss some of this, or Mike and I had a conversation with them. It was
5-6 months ago.
Yeah, where we said, hey, would you have one of your kind of road planners / engineers take a relook at this and see whether there are any options? And I can't remember the name of the gentleman that they had.
They took a look at it, and then that's when Glenn had
Shall
said
we
that,
come back into session?
yeah, and that's when.
Wait a minute, was Dawn finished? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Mike, you met with the developers, or you talked to the developers. Are they gonna come back to council with a question, or?
I don't know, when we told them what, I met with Randy, and then I had a conversation with Mark about doing this resolution to satisfy Randy's concerns. Then we had a meeting with, Fred Gass and John O'Neill, and then we told them what we were trying to put together with this resolution, and they said, well, that's about what we came to in our meeting. But they said it was very similar to the terms of what they came to in their meeting as well. And so, they were a little bit more elaborate. They were talking about some of the CFAC concerns their engineer had brought up, their concerns that now that, the state legislature passed the CFAC stuff, there's a whole new process of guidelines for DSPs and things that haven't been looked at or considered yet, and there haven't been any guinea pigs to kind of go out and take the initial shots. And so they were saying it might be pretty expensive to go back through that process. And so the best thing that we could do to appease some of the concerns was what we're proposing in the resolution. So that's what we're trying to do.
I don't want the resolution to be an instead of a relook. I hope I'm not mishearing you, because I want to make sure, and I really appreciate what Mr. Watts is saying. He didn't get to finish, but you said that you did talk to a person whose name you can't recall and see if they could do a relook. I think it's important to the community that a relook take place.
Right, yeah. So what we did.
Back.
Okay, can we, we're gonna adjourn.
I'm just
trying to
Yeah.
get this thread. He
got interrupted.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear what he had to say, and
Yeah.
you all do too.
So we'll reconvene as long as Counselor Arditi. Okay, so we'll reconvene back the meeting at 4:13.
So on that issue about our conversation with the folks over at Metro, what we heard back from them is that we're in compliance with their plan, with their TRP and everything else. So they had sent me a compliance report. They sent me email stating that, we were currently in compliance. And that's about as far as they were willing to take it at that point in time, which doesn't give us much.
We've asked is, because we've been through this three times, and one of the things we've asked is, would someone at Metro be willing to look at the materials and kind of do an independent assessment that they could bring back to us? Because of the 4 alignments that we looked at, and again, this is over 7 years as I remember it, and my memory's, fallible, is that the southernmost alignment, that kind of front of the river, that was not going to be palatable to anyone. That wasn't going to environmentally work. That there was...
Can I interrupt real quick? Because I want to just talk about that really quick. Because our first shot was just a straight shot right along the river.
Yeah.
And there was only that one and then Beef Bend. Those were the only two main streets that we had planned in and through the corridor. What we did is we put that road on a diet, essentially, a transportation diet or traffic diet. We reduced the width, we reduced the capacity of that road, then we added other roads to kind of carry that capacity. And then that's when you get the diversions now, and you get the other minor collectors in there. But what our study found at that point in time is whatever the lower road was, whether it was a local road or whatever, that was the road that people were gonna go to automatically.
So in our initial look, one of the properties was vacant, and so we would actually be able to go north before the end of that road, and then go, if we thought over the top, I mean, we would have missed the Bankston, completely, but then someone built like a $2 million house on the one vacant property that would allow us to go north before the end of the road. So, and one of the metro mandates was that we avoid displacing people. So that's what caused us to go to the end of the road and then go north. The upper alignments, and again, this is why we want someone to independently verify this, that one of them was too close to Beef Bend Road, and so they said it would put the traffic on Beef Bend Road, which would then require Beef Bend Road to be widened where it meets 99, and there's some, there's a bunch of housing right there. And then the other alignment was kind of, looks like we're gonna go through the manufacturer.
Well, we went straight to Capulet, and our feeling on Capulet was that Capulet was too narrow. So we're kind of like, we didn't want to feed all the traffic straight into Capulet and then create a huge congestion problem at that location, because as you know, like Capulet even narrows down, it's closer to like 20 feet up by the northern piece, and the impact there would be.
They said that if we were to go there, then that would be failing at the time, basically when it was built. So, like, if they're, and again, if someone, a fresh set of eyes could look at this, I mean, but we really didn't have.
Can I just interject real quick, and then, because you said it, I've had my hand up for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to put you guys on the defensive about what you did or said or what's there. I think what I'm hearing from the community is they would like to have a relook, and it would be helpful, like you were just saying, Mr. Watts, if we could have somebody from Metro come, meet with some of the members of the community who have done their measurements, have some suggestions, and put our heads together like we have done here in this room. Perhaps collectively, we could come up with something would be acceptable and would take a lot of this tension that Mr. Olson brought to your feet the other day. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish. People appreciate your explanations, but they also feel like it's saying, no, we can't have another look. And I don't think that comes across as transparent as we all want to as a city council. We want the public to feel that we have opened up the kimonos and we've let people come in and take another look at this and see if reasonable minds can come up to a consensus as of today, 2025.
Yeah.
How much is it to do?
500 grand.
There,
At least that.
That was the last one, was around 5, I think,
I think if we could,
We spent $1.5 million on
in total.
I think it's,
we would have.
isn't it worth it to the community, though, to get that transparency, open the kimono, let the people see, have somebody come, explain, talk to the public that have knowledge, look at how well it's been for us to just go around the table to come up with a consensus, and all of us were in agreement almost immediately, okay? It really helps to sit in a round table and have a relook at something and get everyone's input and thoughts to get to a consensus.
Yeah, no, we would love Metro to come in and actively engage. And we've made that request. We do not love being the only people. And they have been very reluctant.
Yeah.
But maybe if we request it again in writing and just explain the community concerns and critical importance, and that they are a regional government, that it's to require us to do things or not do them, maybe they would be willing to send in one of their road planners and perform that work.
I think if we even started the petition of the community and got all 4,000 residents of King City to ask Metro to come, how could they say no?
As long as it's residents of King City and the urban growth zone,
Yeah.
where it's, the last petition was people from Hawaii and Cancun and New York.
I would
and-
like to go to Hawaii.
I
Doesn't that sound good right
found
now?
it out, and I looked where all of these people lived. 18% of them lived in King City. The rest of them lived outside of King City.
Well, I'm hoping that we can convince Metro with some kind of, the vote of the people. If they're not gonna listen to you two, it's not fair to put you two out there in front of Metro. Why don't you have the community say, this is what we're asking for our,
By the way,
can't we ask for that?
Well, let's do it.
Let's hear out Counselor Hartman. Yeah, so, right, yeah, so what we've done previously is we had the engineers, because we've had 3 sets of engineers come in and work on the plan at 3 different times. And we've had those engineers present to explain the situation at that time. You know, so they're far better at explaining this stuff than I am, because it's their plan. But now they're no longer under contract. They're off doing whatever else they're doing. But, you know, we could try to bring them back in with a,
So if that would help if Metro is gonna, stonewall us. I mean,
yeah, so,
Dan is one of the engineers that helped you build it. I can put in a phone call. I know them quite well.
yeah, so, you know, DKS, SCJ, all these are the groups that have basic, and so, like, we've asked them to come in and give presentations to the public before numerous times. But, yeah, coming back in, looking at this, we'd also have to, the problem with doing or changing or whatever else is that we have 2 other documents or 3 other documents that are tied together.
Right.
So then,
I didn't hear what Mr. Hartman said because, Ms. Paiso was talking about the fact that there's a gathering of Metro this week at the zoo, and she was suggesting that maybe we go to that mixer and see if we could leverage some power over Metro. And so she was having that conversation while you were asking a question. I didn't hear what it was. I'm sorry.
you want to start again?
Sure. Rather than go to Metro, it might be more beneficial if they will come, because yes, they're not under contract. Talk to the design engineers that actually put the plan together. They would very much be more able to explain why they designed it the way they did, and they would be able to answer any Metro question. I mean, they designed it a certain way, but because they know the rules. And the one thing that I know is those groups are much more adept at speaking to just plain, rather than trying to talk through legalese.
Could we have both of them?
Metro is going to tell us whatever they want us to know. The engineers will answer our questions, very honestly. So the questions you guys are looking for,
Yeah.
I would potentially ask the engineers to do this with us.
Yeah, because,
You get much simpler answers to understand.
yeah, and they looked at the codes in depth, like the TPR, Metro titles, in and out, and.
They're gonna tell us what we can and can't do.
Right.
I'd like to hear, it's a great suggestion. I'd like to hear from as many people, but seriously, I want to keep Metro's feet to the fire. I want them to see the community and how they're responding. Because again, I think all of us are taking those hits, and if they hear it directly from the people who are complaining loudly about all of this, it might be helpful to us so that we're not being just the ones taking these hits, okay? Do you hear what I'm saying?
Metro's acutely aware of what's happening. They themselves, I think, are getting public records requests.
They're aware, but they're not here to see the people upset, saying this and that and the other thing that you guys have been hearing now for a long time, and there's been a lot of community upset, and they're taking it out on us collectively as a council because they hold us to be able to be champions for the community, and there's only so much I'm hearing from you that you can do. So let's get Metro here and let them hear it and let them absorb some of that and help us do whatever it is we're supposed to be doing.
That's where the engineers can help us.
Yeah.
The one who can tell us what questions we can ask and how to push the button, because that's what they do. I know Metro is going to pay us very little attention right now, no matter how much we yell, because they've been dictated to do some things this year with affordable housing.
We can issue a subpoena, we have subpoena power as a council, we could subpoena their asses over here, I don't care if they wanna come or not. To be honest with you, I don't care, they owe us a duty. They owe the community to hear us out. If they don't wanna come willingly, you know what, you wanna talk about eminent domain and threat, just send them a fucking subpoena, I'll issue it today. I'll get Metro here.
I'm sure that they'll be willing to come down. So I just want to talk really quick about, some of the housing stuff and how we got to this and why, you know, folks are generally upset. It's not just the transportation, it's the amount of density that's being programmed in, right? And when House Bill 2001, 2003 was passed, basically brought in, or opened up our planning to a point where you almost have to plan for infrastructure to support anywhere from 20 to 25 units per acre, based on this new state law that was passed. And then you have climate-friendly and equitable communities, which was passed as well, and that takes away your parking, and it talks about vehicle miles traveling, and it talks about queuing, it talks about all these other elements, so we're trying to get ahead of that and make sure we're in compliance with all that as well. And then you have all the other regulations, ODOT's regulations for transportation under Go 12, Oregon's under, Goal 10 housing, like the litany of regulations and everything else.
Lawyers too, that make it all
Yep.
difficult, I get it.
And so the consultants are trying to juggle all that, and they're trying to build a transportation network that supports those housing demands and the infrastructure demands that's gonna be necessitated.
They have to balance a lot, but here's the thing, the community has spoken loudly. They only have certain ways that they can make their voices heard. If you want to try to calm the waters, which is what I heard you say at the last meeting, and again, I'm just here to help us get to the goal of calming the waters, establishing trust, opening transparency, and helping to ease whatever it is that's going on in the community that has been impacting every one of us. I say get the people here. I like Mr. Hartman's idea. If he knows that the developers have the answers and the engineers have the answers, bring them all in here, but also bring the person who is the decision maker or the bean counter that's gonna make the decision. Those engineers probably, they have to report to Metro, so they only, you know, I want the bottom line boss who's gonna make that decision to hear what the people have to say. And if Metro says to the community, well, this is the way it's gonna have to go, well, then at least now they're hearing it from them and not from us. That make sense?
It does, and I spoke to Garrett Rosenthal, who is our rep before, and he is very willing to show up.
That would be great, so there shouldn't be a problem.
He said, give him the date,
Okay,
you
then,
know.
we need to get the people here, and we need to do a relook, and we need to call it a relook. It's not just a song and dance party where they're just gonna tell us what we wanna hear. We want a relook, we want a really good faith relook, we want input, we wanna put our brains together. We have a lot of good brains in this room, a lot of good brains in the community, we can get this done. I know we can do it if we try.
Okay, so can we get back to,
We need to.
I think we got this.
all right, so.
I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw Peter over there scribbling notes and
Yeah,
crossing things out, so you will.
Yeah.
Can you circulate it one more draft before we get in front of
Yeah,
council?
what
Put it
is
tomorrow.
Real quick.
You get it tomorrow?
It's very short.
He's gonna read it.
It's not very short.
Okay.
Tomorrow, take your breath.
Yeah, Peter, I just
Take
don't
your
have
breath.
the pack.
Mike can send it out tomorrow.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
got it, I got it.
Are we good?
I'm good.
Yeah,
All right, then,
motion.
could I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Am I allowed to make a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yeah, second? All in favor?
That's permission or get thrown out of here.
All seven,
All right, thank you.
adjourned at 4:30.
But we can't hear anything.
Greetings.
I'll be there for Dave, so.